I'm unmuted now. Hello.
Ah, there we go. What's going on? Good to see you, sir. Good to see you.
Hi, man. How are you?
Hello,
Look at this
everyone.
now.
Thanks for
Hi,
being
guys.
here, guys. Yeah. How you doing this
So
evening?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing fantastic. I feel fresher than 20 minutes ago when we spoke. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's funny, we find ourselves here once again, live, having a little chat. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Sorry. Don't mind me. Nothing to see here. Yeah, me too, dude. This has been a little bit a while in the making. Something you approached me about over a month ago now, I would say.
Yeah, we did it right after the new year, is when we kind of
Yeah.
met up and I shared this idea, and we've been working on it ever since. So it's been a long process.
So first of all, hello to everyone in chat. Hi, Ezran, Silas, Kiwi, Beezy, Film and Lit. Oh no, that's us. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Trout, what are we doing here? What's going on?
Well, this is a little idea we've been working on called the Film and Literature Society, and really it's more of an opportunity for me to make myself read than anything. I realized that there was something missing from Twitch. I'm very big into the gaming side of Twitch, and I know there's the IRL streaming and the cooking and all of that, but for those of us who are maybe inclined towards reading and appreciation of the arts in general, but definitely film and literature specifically, I felt like there was sort of a hole there, and it was something that I had seen. I'd talked to countless people here who all said, "Oh, I love reading, but I don't do it enough," or "I'd like to get back into it." And so that's what spawned this, was just my desire to get back into regular reading, but also my love for kind of the communal aspect of Twitch and the opportunity to kind of merge those two things and create something new. So here we are.
Well, I think it's a great idea. It's a really underutilized thing on this platform, right? Twitch, as we know, didn't even start with gaming in mind. It's very well suited to it, but we've seen music become a thing on Twitch. We've seen just chatting obviously become a huge thing on Twitch. IRL streams, food, cooking, all these kind of things. I think it's perfectly suited to this kind of thing.
Sure.
By the way, Silas says that both mics could be turned up.
Yeah, I already took care of that. I already got it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
My set is falling apart, guys. I'm sorry. So we're both here for the FLS, the Film and Literature Society. We're all here for it. What's your background with film and literature? Why is this something you're interested in, Trout?
Well, neither film nor literature do I have any kind of a professional background. I've always just been an enthusiast, and you know, it's funny, on the side of the literature, I was just thinking today about kind of how I got into loving reading, and I have to, you know, I could point to several literature and English teachers that I had, especially in high school. I had a couple very great teachers, but ultimately the credit goes to my mother. She would make me read. I mean, when I was a kid, it was like, you know, she'd hand me books and be like, read this. And so it started with sort of a love for fantasy and science fiction and that kind of thing. And then later on, it grew into a love for the classics as well. So that's where it started. And then it wasn't until I got a little older, late teens or so, that I got into film. And I think my love for film started the same place that a lot of young white American men get into film, which is Quentin Tarantino. I saw Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill and was just like obsessed with how great they were. And then, you know, from there got into some of the other greats. But yeah, in fact, at one point, I actually my desire was to go to film school and to be a director or a writer in film. That obviously didn't work out, so I had to do my fallback, which is a Twitch streamer.
It's great fallback.
Yeah.
Great fallback.
What about you? What kind of background do you have with these things?
Well, I wasn't. By the way, Empire of Chi, hello, I see you. What's up? I didn't. I wasn't born into a literary family or anything like that. An artistic family, but more the visual arts. Grew up being into lots of things, games, films as a kid, just a normal kind of kid, and music. At some point, though, something about the something being self-contained, the idea of a world within a bit of text on paper, and that being something that you could unlock at any moment, and it was just yours, and there's an interface of your imagination with this text that was written maybe 5 years ago, maybe 150 years ago, maybe 500 years ago. Something about that really captured my imagination, and the sheer weight of everything that has already been left there by these people that painstakingly put their hearts and souls into these things. I became kind of aware of this, I would say, through actually a mutual friend of Cheese and mine. I'd read a bunch, and my mother read Lord of the Rings to me as a kid, and I had an interest in lit, and enjoyed it in high school and whatnot. But it wasn't till probably like I was 19, 20, there was a friend of mine who I lived with, a housemate, who had this bookshelf in his room, and it was filled with all these Steinbeck novels, all this Henry Miller, and all this shit that like I'd heard of but hadn't delved into, and over the course of living with this guy, I would borrow book after book after book, and that really began my love. So I think my love kicked into overdrive in my late teens.
Sure. Yeah.
And then subsequently I went on to do a degree in literature, and the rest is. And now I'm a Twitch streamer for some fucking reason. So here we are. And as for film, loved Tarantino as well. I'm not sure. I think that grew more naturally. Just a lot of people around me were really interested in film. Introduced me to Scorsese and
yes, yeah,
Polanski and a lot of great filmmakers.
It's funny, you kind of brought up the interface between the paper you're reading and your imagination, and I think we had talked on content about the kind of escapist nature of all kinds of different medias, whether it be like literature or video games or movies or anime or whatever, whatever it is you're into. There is kind of an escapist part of it, but especially with reading, where there's no pictures, there's no visual for you to go off of, and it's all kind of this world that someone else has created, but you have your own spin on it mentally, and that's what I love. And I think it's going to be really interesting when we get everybody reading this same book, and we all sort of have our spin on like, oh, this is the world that I've created in my mind, and then we can kind of like meet in the middle and be like, oh, I didn't even consider that, and not just in terms of the narrative, but also just in terms of like your visualization of the world at large, or that world that exists, so.
Yeah, well, this is something that one of my disappointments with being into lit, being into reading in general, is it's hard to share. It's hard to share, on the one hand, you don't have many people reading the same things at all. And then even when you do, it might have been 10 years ago.
Right. I run into that all the time.
The opportunity for something like this is great, right?
Sure.
To be able to share things and bounce ideas at the same time off a bunch of great people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I run into that all the time, where I'll be reading a book and I'll mention, my boss at work is a big reader, and I'll say, oh, I'm reading Dune. And he'll say, oh yeah, I read that, in high school in the 80s. And so you can't really have the kind of conversation that you would have with someone who just read chapter 12 and you just finished chapter 12, and you can really like, you've got it fresh in your memory. So I think that's going to, like you said, it's going to present a really good opportunity.
So then what is the, I guess, the mission statement of this film and literature, this FLS, Film and Literature Society?
Well,
What are we out here to do?
first of all, I think that's something that we're going to work out. And everybody in chat, you guys are part of this. You guys are definitely a part of sort of creating
Gotcha.
this. We have built the bare bones of what we'll see, But I think that ultimately, right now, the mission statement is essentially creating a community where people can come together and appreciate the finer things in life, or what I was thinking in my head the other day is the things that make us human, which is our ability to
Ooh, I like
appreciate,
that.
art and beauty, and even appreciate darkness and sadness and tragedy, But to come together and to be able to do it together, I think is it adds an extra dimension to just laying in bed reading a novel. It adds this extra dimension. So that, I suppose, is the mission statement: is a place where people can come together and be human.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Now, I think it's also worth pointing out that as my wall falls apart, it's worth pointing out that though Trout and I have, I don't know, I would say a fairly somewhat dense background in lit, this is not required at all, right?
No.
That's not. Do you think that this is required for enjoying the FLS?
Well, if it was, I probably wouldn't be here because, unlike Porto, I do not have a literature degree. I have a bookshelf full of books, and I've really enjoyed that. But I saw, Randy Lee Dandy said, I've read one book. Well, you're about to read your second book.
Two, baby.
And you're
Let's
just
go.
as capable of reading this. We're not going to pick out titles that are dense or impossible to read or in another language. We're going to pick things that are, fun to read, and they're going to be light, and they're going to be interesting. And so, whether you're, Porto with his doctorate in literature, or you're Randy Lee Dandy who read one book once a long time ago, you're on equal footing here. And that's one thing that we talked about, was not creating this as some kind of academic, intellectual pursuit, but instead just a fun community to enjoy movies and books, I mean,
Absolutely.
It sounds fancy, film and literature, but really it's movies and books. Like, that's what we're doing here. So
yeah, indeed. So I think it might be a good idea to sort of talk about how we're going to lay out the structure of this new experiment, this Film and Literature Society, in the coming months. So I've got a few things I've jotted down here, and please let me know if there's anything I've forgotten or omitted. So the general, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I often am. The general plan is we're going to do bi-weekly streams, fortnightly streams,
yes,
every 2 weeks. And for each of these streams, obviously there'll be one book or one piece of lit or one piece of media that we're consuming at the time. And there'll be like a designated, we're going to have read up to X point that we'll point out. Roughly maybe like 100 pages or something like that. Obviously it's not required of people, but that's what we'll be discussing. Thank you for the follow, Caster, by the way. We're going to have film screenings as well in the Discord. We got a Discord channel. And I think we're doing one of those today, right, Trout?
We are, yeah. And we'll announce the movie. I've sort of picked out a special movie that I think we're all going to really enjoy. So I'm calling it the after party. You guys can call it whatever you want, but there is going to be a little
we'll
after
get
party.
Fucked up and watch movies.
Yeah, definitely. So come by the Discord, and that's another point that I'd like to make. I'd really like to stress this, that the Twitch stream is one component of this. Another component of it is the YouTube channel, which will get you the links to all that. But I think the central thing here is the Discord server. I think that's where, between now and 2 weeks from now, that's where we're going to be discussing. We're going to be in there, and you guys are all going to be in there, and we're going to be discussing what we've read. We've got a section for spoilers, so if you're spoiling something, Kiwi, I know you're already done with the book, basically.
Yeah, Kiwi's just eating through it.
But yeah, there's going to be a lot of really good discussion in there, as well as the film screenings are in there. It's all free of charge, so feel free to jump in there, join, and we'll have a good time. So yeah, I just wanted to stress that the Discord is essential. Like you want to be a part of the Discord as well if you really want to get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation.
Absolutely. There's a question in chat from Randy Lee Dandy, and the question is, what is the book?
That's a good question. What is
so
the book?
maybe we should move on, and I'm gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna set the scene. All right. The year is 1960. I'll tell you a couple of things that happened in 1960 just to get us in the mood. January 1st, 1960, the temperature at Oodnadatta, South Australia, reaches 50.7 degrees Celsius or 123 Fahrenheit in the shade for what remains the highest temperature ever recorded in Australia. Later on that year, Ben-Hur wins the Best Picture at the Oscars.
Good film.
Yeah. President Eisenhower signs the Civil Rights Act of 1960. May be relevant. Dr. Seuss publishes Green Eggs and Ham. You might have heard of it. It went on to be the 4th best-selling children's title of all time. The newly named Beatles, an up-and-coming band, begin a 48-night residency at the Indra Club in Hamburg, West Germany. Across the world, Colonel Joseph Mobutu, you might have heard of him, takes power in the Republic of the Congo via a military coup. Later that year, John F. Kennedy is elected as the President of the United States. In other news, Penguin Books is found not guilty of the crime of obscenity in the UK case of D.H. Lawrence's book, Lady Chatterley's Lover. The world population at this stage was 3 billion people approximately, which is 4.8 billion less than today. And on the 11th of July, 1960, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, her first ever novel, is published, becomes an immediate bestseller, and goes on to win the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1961. Now, Trouty, we've discussed this before. I've never read this novel. Well, I've started, but I've never read it before the FLS began. However, this is widely regarded as an absolute classic of modern American literature. It's taught across the country in the US, so I hear, in middle schools and high schools. This is true, right? I hope I'm not making this up.
Yeah, no, this is all true, as far as I'm aware. Okay. Absolutely.
So why do you think this is the case? Why is it considered so essential in the US?
Well, I prepared a little something to kind of talk about that. So the first thing I saw, I was doing some research on this for this episode, and the first thing I saw, which I think is interesting, and people may take this, whatever way they're going to take it, but in 2006, British librarians who were polled on the important novels of all time ranked To Kill a Mockingbird ahead of the Bible as a book that every adult should read before they die. So
it pipped the Bible.
It beat the Bible by British librarians. So I'm not sure if that says something about the book or about British librarians or both.
I think it might say a little bit about the culture of British libraries at the time.
Yeah, a little bit. But nonetheless, I found that an interesting factoid. Now, there was a historian by the name of Joseph Crispino who said that in the 20th century, To Kill a Mockingbird is probably the most widely read book dealing with race in America, and its main character, Atticus Finch, who we'll read about, is the most enduring fictional image of racial heroism. So that's stuff I found, and I think that those kind of speak to the importance of the book, not just for Americans, but sort of in a global sense. But what I wrote is it's a coming-of-age tale set in the post-Civil War South. It's the story of a young girl who must come to terms with a world that is oftentimes dark and evil. It's also the story of a widowed father attempting to protect the innocence of his family, while at the same time tasked with defending a man accused of rape. It tackles themes of racial prejudice, class inequality, gender roles, and most importantly, in my opinion, the loss of innocence. I think that's a recurring theme. And so that's why I think it matters. I think that it very eloquently, but also simplistically, tackles a lot of issues that existed in the 60s, certainly, and no one would argue that a lot of those issues are still on the table today and that we're still dealing with it. So that's, to me, why this book matters, because it's
Yeah.
tackling some very heavy issues, but doing it in a simple, eloquent way that just flows, man. The book, it just flows.
Really well put. And, it goes to show that things do not need to be overly intellectualized to be true, to transcend time and become classics, right?
Absolutely.
So I guess I come from an interesting perspective as an Australian. We have a different literary tradition. I would say somewhat watered down literary tradition, but that's just my opinion. And this is not something that is, I'm sure it's taught at some schools, but it is not part of, let's say, standardized curriculum over here. Probably gets taught a little bit more in like first year university, I would say, but even still, it's not considered an essential text,
Sure.
though it's regarded as a classic and everyone has heard of it. Do you think this story transcends the US context?
Well,
or do you think it is specific to the US?
Some people might argue that it's not even specific to the U.S., that it's specific to the South, which is its own thing. If you're familiar, those of you in the audience who live in the United States, the South is the South, and everywhere else is everywhere else. So it's basically essentially the southeast portion of the United States. But so in some ways, it's central to the South. In other ways, it's central to the United States, but I think that it does capture a sort of shard of human nature. Like I mentioned, that I think the really important theme is, or the theme that stands out to me, is the loss of innocence. And I think that's something that we all deal with. I think it's something that we all kind of go through as we grow from children to adolescents to adults. And even as adults, you still like have those struggles where you're like, you still are trying to hold on to a piece of your childhood a little bit, or of that graceful innocence, and it as it fades away, because you're dealing with a dark, often evil world. So yeah, I do think that it transcends America and the American South and the 1960s, or I think it's set in the 40s, I believe. So I think it transcends all of that and kind of presents something that is essential to humanity.
Right. So you mentioned some of the themes. Now let's just stick a little bit on this loss of innocence. Now, again, we don't want to get into anything spoilery because this is kind of just an introduction. Do you see the loss of innocence, though, in kind of a broad sense, as the loss of the narrator's innocence, or is it the loss of a town's innocence, or does it cover multiple variants of this theme?
I think it's all of those things. But specifically, I'd say that it's the girl. Not necessarily losing her innocence entirely, but losing a piece of that, growing up carefree in the South, not having a whole lot to worry about. And then suddenly this massive event happens, and it affects the town as a whole, but it affects her as well. She sees things. I like what Silas here says. He says it's the loss of the reader's innocence as well. It forces them to examine their own hearts. So yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point, Silas.
Interesting.
So I think that growing up today, I mean, I think of kids today with everything that's going on in the world, like, let's talk about COVID for a second and say, like, can you imagine
Let's
being
go.
like 6 or 8 years old and having this massive change kind of forced upon you, and not understanding it completely, but you know that people are like panicking, and there's this massive change, and there's all kinds of craziness. You know, maybe you catch the news while your parents are watching it, or you overhear a piece of a conversation, and you're confused and you don't know what's going on. So I think that applies now, to being a child, but also to being an adult, and maybe getting feeling comfortable in the world that you live in, and then suddenly there's this massive spark that ignites a whole, powder keg of a situation. Yeah.
I think it's, I don't want to get too much into what I've read thus far, because that's not the point of this particular stream, but I think it's really important. I mentioned it to you earlier that this is narrated from a child's perspective. There's something very honest about that, and there's something very there's not enough guile for facades yet, so you kind of get things in sheer light. It's hard for the truth to hide with this perspective, and I think it's a really great choice, rather than as I've read a lot of things more recently with a kind of omniscient, all-seeing narrator that knows everything, but could also be manipulating the reader a little bit.
Sure.
And I feel like it's the perfect perspective to discuss things like justice, loss of innocence, and truth, in a sense.
Yeah, having a 6-year-old as your narrator is the opposite of the unreliable narrator. The narrator you can't trust. Think like Fight Club or American Psycho or something.
Yep.
Instead, you have the ultimate reliable narrator, because she's innocent, because she has this piece of innocence within her that she wouldn't lie. She may not understand everything, but she's not going to lie.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this is set in Monroeville in Alabama, where Harper Lee, I think, was born and raised, right?
Yeah, she was born and raised. She also died there. She spent some time living in New York City, but then later in life moved back to her hometown. So this is based on, it's actually, if we're going to get into Harper Lee's experiences, there was her father was a criminal defense attorney. He defended two black men who were accused of murdering a white storekeeper, and the father and son were found guilty, and they were hanged to death. And so it's interesting that a lot of this, even the overarching narrative, is based on her own experiences. So when you're reading the book, when you get into the book and you're reading through the eyes of this child, you're kind of reading through the eyes of the author as a child. She's looking back on her experiences, and it's interesting, to say the least.
Now, this book, I've looked into it a little bit, and it's been described as, and this is not a style of book, a style of literature I've actually heard of before, probably because I'm Australian, as Southern Gothic. Have you heard of this before?
Yes. The only other author that I'm really familiar with, I think her name's Shirley Jackson. She wrote a lot of short stories as well as novels, and she's known for that style as well. And when you read the style, when you read it, you'll kind of pick up on that style. You and I were talking about how it's kind of elegant but simplistic. It's not ostentatious. The style, there's not a lot of big words. There's not a lot of, but it still flows really well, and it has that Southern grace kind of. And so I think that's where that Southern Gothic style comes from.
Let's talk a minute about Harper Lee. I looked into her a little bit. I think you might have a little more information than I do on her. But I'm just going to give an impression of Harper Lee, the person. She seems really cool.
Yeah.
She seemed really cool. There's something, so in her bio, in the copy that I have, her chief interests outside of literature, number one amongst those is, and I quote, being alone. Which is such a fucking, what a fucking author. What's your take on Harper Lee, the person?
Well, I think she was really interesting because, like you said, she was sort of reclusive. She liked to be alone. She only published 2 books,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is crazy. When you read this book, you'll think like, oh, this is the work of someone that was a prolific author. She only published 2 books. It was this book and the sequel to this book. And so she led a very interesting life. We were talking before the stream. We both found in our research something I didn't know until, just the other day. Her childhood friend and her lifelong friend was Truman Capote, who, those of you who read will know that he wrote In Cold Blood. He wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is, I just couldn't believe that. So, interestingly enough, Truman Capote was known for sort of a jet-setting, fast-paced life. He lived in Manhattan, I think, or lived in New York City, and was known for being a socialite. And then his best friend was Harper Lee, who liked to be alone, to read, and to garden. She preferred living in this small town in Alabama. I mean, it's really interesting stuff. A little factoid that I found was her father had sent her to school to study the law and wanted her to study the law and become an attorney. In 1948, he sent her to a summer seminar school kind of thing at Oxford University, and it was a study on European civilization. Now, he had hoped that this would make her more interested in her legal studies. She was attending school in Tuscaloosa, but it did not. It did not. She did not pursue the law and instead wanted to be a writer. And I think we're all lucky that she made that decision.
I think it was a good choice. And it is fascinating that she only wrote 2 pieces.
Yeah.
The other one, Go Set a Watchman, I think it's called.
Yes. Yeah.
So a couple of thoughts on that. Well, first thing, that it was the second novel she released, but she wrote it prior to Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
And she's later, I don't know if admitted is the right term, she's later stated that it was actually her first draft for To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, the first draft. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because I know a lot of people that are huge fans of To Kill a Mockingbird, and when they read Go Set a Watchman, I saw somebody in chat say Atticus Finch is my hero. He's one of the main characters, and when you read the book, you'll love him. But he's maybe not so lovable in the sequel. I haven't read it personally, but I've read summaries of it, and my understanding is that they sort of destroy that, or she sort of destroyed that image by publishing the second work. So it's very controversial, the Go Set a Watchman.
And it's interesting as well that she didn't write anything afterwards. I don't have any quotes from her on the matter. Well, she did. I'm sure she did, but it seems she didn't seek publication of novels after this. Apparently, she very much hated the limelight.
Yes.
Really did not like the publicity that she got. She sort of quoted as saying something along the lines of she feared it would be railed by critics, but in fact it was praised, and that was even worse. And I think she's also said things along the lines of she told her that's the story she wanted to tell. And that gives the book even more weight to me. The fact that this was the thing that she had to say, and she wasn't seeking literary fame and acclaim and all that shit. This was a truth that she wanted to tell. This was a piece of art that she felt the world needed, or she needed to express. Do you think this is the only reason that she only produced 2 pieces, or is there something more to it?
I don't know. Well, when you're talking about this, I'm reminded of J.D. Salinger, who wrote Catcher in the Rye. He didn't write much else. I think he published the 9 Stories, which is a collection of short stories, and then maybe 1 or 2 other books. But he was very reclusive, didn't like the limelight.
Mm.
And he kind of had the same thing. He said, when I've got a story worth telling, you know, I'll tell it. Otherwise, we're done here. You know, I wrote
Yeah.
the story I wanted to, got that thing out of my brain, that itching feeling where you need to create something, got that out. It's on paper and we're good to go. So I
Mm.
don't know. I mean, it could be as simple as that, but I think that she, you know, if she said, well, that's what I wanted to do and I did it, there's usually like, so I've got this quote here, and it kind of reminds me of that. She had a tongue-in-cheek way of speaking, and it was very like sarcastic and sort of dry. So in 1966, there was a Richmond, Virginia school board that wanted to ban To Kill a Mockingbird, claiming it was immoral literature. And her response to that it was
That's
really
funny.
great. So this is in 1966. She said, "Surely it is plain to the simplest intelligence that To Kill a Mockingbird spells out in words of seldom more than 2 syllables a code of honor and conduct, Christian in its ethic, that is the heritage of all Southerners. To hear that the novel is immoral has made me count the years between now and 1984, for I have yet to come across a better example of doublethink." So she
Fuck.
referenced a little
Roasted.
Orwell there and roasted these people.
Roasted.
Absolutely. And I love that because, yeah, and so that's what I think, like maybe there was some journalist that asked her, you know, in the 80s, when are you writing another book? And she said, whenever, when I feel like it, or when I've got another story to tell. And it could have been sort of a dry, like pithy sort of, you know, response to that. So I'm not sure.
That's an evisceration, man. That's really good.
I also, another little factoid that I found interesting was that in 2007, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by George W. Bush. And that was for her contribution to literature. And that's the highest. So I've got this little quote here. It's the highest civilian award available in the United States. For anything higher, you'd have to be either a government employee or in the military. It recognizes individuals who have made an especially meritorious contribution to the security or national interests of the United States, world peace, cultural, or other significant public or private endeavors. It's very rare that people get the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I don't know exact numbers, but presidents don't just hand them out willy-nilly. So I think it's kind of cool that somebody who wrote a book in the 60s, or in 1960, or published it in 1960, 47, almost 50 years later, she still hadn't published the second book at that point, I don't think. So for one book, got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and only ended up publishing one other book. It's kind of interesting and kind of cool, you know?
It's very cool. I mean, you talk about somebody hitting an absolute home run on their first swing.
Yeah, right.
It's just out, you know, Pulitzer Prize, Presidential Medal of Freedom. Do you think this had anything to do with her not publishing many books afterwards? This immense success.
I don't know. I mean, she won the Pulitzer Prize, right? So maybe it was like, you know, I'm done. I did it. But it could be...
You know, that's it, right? That's
yeah,
what I think.
It could also be that, like... I mean, there had to have been a lot of pressure, right? There had to have been a ton of pressure. Like, you write this book, it's incredible, you win the Pulitzer Prize, you wow everyone. You know, 20 years later, every kid in school is reading it in your entire country. That's a lot of pressure to write a second book, right? I mean, like, what if the next one bombs?
That is not the trajectory that any artist generally takes.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That is not the trajectory, you know, unless you're a one-hit wonder in pop or something like that.
Right,
but
right.
The idea is you're supposed to, the first one is supposed to receive a little bit of critical acclaim, and you're supposed to be a promising new voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably by like your second or third one, then you're supposed to drop the hammer on them. And then you dip a little bit. People don't like your next couple of things. And then you bring back the comeback 10 years later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You generally don't come out like this. And I remember Fitzgerald, who had a different trajectory, but also achieved success and acclaim pretty early on.
Right.
He, in some interview with him, he discusses a moment after he's in his like 20s and he's just released. The title of his first novel escapes me. It's similar to the rest of his novels, and he's got the woman of his dreams, who he basically had been trying to win over forever, who later burnt in a fire, around his arms. He's driving down some street in New York in his nice car. He's got acclaim. The world is at his feet. He's young. He's handsome. It was before Gatsby CC. What was it called? Anyway, it will come to me. And he says that he'd never felt more miserable in all his life, because he did it. He did it. It was there was nowhere to go from there.
Sure.
And
Hit a glass
I sometimes
ceiling.
wonder what effect that is, because his acclaim actually, at that stage, Gatsby was the one that really blew up for him and became his classic. But that didn't come until later for him. But even that, maybe a third of the acclaim that Harper Lee got was enough to really trash his mind for a while.
Right.
So I can only imagine what it would do to someone who, like Harper Lee, seems to be a recluse as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Now, I saw an interesting question in chat. Did she do anything professionally other than writing? I'm not aware of anything. I think that she I think she liked drinking. I mean, you could say maybe she was drinking professionally. I think she was pretty big into drinking. But as far as...
She seemed to enjoy a cigarette as well.
Yes, she was a smoker
Nice
and a
ciggy.
drinker. But I think, and keep in mind, neither of us are like professional Harper Lee historians. We're just going off of I'm going off of the Wikipedia page that I read. But I think she did some philanthropy, especially in what is the city there? In Alabama.
Monroeville.
Yeah, in Monroeville, she did some philanthropy and tried to do some community work. But other than that, and she wasn't the standard like socialite philanthropist that went to galas and stuff. Like, she actually donated money, in large sums to various groups and stuff. Yeah. So that's all I'm aware of.
Yeah, and I'm sure her legacy, I guess she already achieved so much with that, and I'm sure she was able to use that position, even as a recluse, to do things in her life that she thought were valuable, or perhaps she just wanted to just enjoy living at that stage.
Yeah.
I just want to point out to chat, getting a lot of questions. I'm not ignoring you guys. I think we're gonna open it up a bit more to chat quite soon, actually. And we'll get into whatever chat wants to talk about with us. Is that cool, Trout?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fine. I'm looking forward to getting more involved with chat. But for now, yeah, we sort of have a structure here that we're trying to follow so we can get everything in time. We don't want to take up too much of your time.
You guys.
Yeah, not at all.
I see you catched it. I will answer that question in a bit. So I have another question for you, Trouty.
Let's hear it.
It's a pressing one. It's a very pressing one. I actually don't know what the answer to this question is. We didn't plan this. Will we be able to hear any of this novel on your Twitch channel?
Okay, actually, let's get into that, because I had planned on it, and I may still do it. There's one issue that struck me this morning on my way to work, and I did want to discuss this a little bit as well. There's some dark themes in this book. There's definitely a lot of darkness that, as somebody in chat had mentioned, that it sort of like turns on you and makes you reflect on your own way of living and your own way of thinking. However, there's also some pretty adult language in certain parts.
There's racial epithets.
Yeah, there's specifically one word I'm not allowed to say. So I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that. I haven't thought it through totally, but I would really like to read the book on stream. We'll see. I may read portions of it on stream, and
maybe
then other
excerpts.
portions. Yeah, I may read some excerpts. As you guys know, Trout TV, we are going to be doing some reading. We're going to be doing some, reading streams with the Lord of the Rings that I'm currently working through on stream. But yeah, I'm not sure. Definitely at least some excerpts though. And I think
So,
the same could be
sorry.
said for you, that there's going to be some, like on your own stream, maybe a little bit of like side discussion about what you've read and what some of your viewers are reading as well. Because I know that some of the folks here are from the Porto stream. So
Of course, yeah. I'm not. It's not something that I'm going to have take over my stream, because I don't want people who are not interested in that to feel like, oh god, he won't shut the fuck up about To Kill a Mockingbird. But I mean, that's something that I'm doing in my real life right now, and I'm definitely open to chatting about that with people if they're interested.
Sure.
So you've got a copy of the book.
I do indeed.
You probably got 5 copies of the book, you son of a bitch.
I think I have 3. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got one, which I picked up. In the Discord, I have put a few links to different ways which people can acquire the text. I know Kiwi has the text right now. I imagine a lot of our US friends might just happen to have a copy. But there's also there's Audible. I think that's what Kiwi might be using. Melissa Kim also put in the Discord a link to, she reads ebooks a lot. I imagine they might be cheap, and if you got yourself a Kindle or something like that, that'd be pretty tight. What are people in chat using? CC audiobook also awesome.
Side note, well, not a side note, but never forget you've got a local library. I guarantee everybody here has a local library. You can go grab it. You can go grab it from your local library, and it's a quick, easy read. Maybe take you a couple weeks if you try to power through. But don't forget about libraries. Those are so vital, and I feel like in this world of technology, we forget, oh yeah, there's a building right down the road with thousands of books. I guarantee they have more copies than I do.
Yeah, I actually spent a couple of days ago, I spent a few hours in the library. This copy is not from the library, but the city library down the road from me is lovely. And so I like to just sit in there. And, you sometimes get in that environment where everyone's doing something, and so you want to do it. It's like, oh, everyone's in here reading and doing shit. Oh, yeah, I'll sit down and read.
Yeah.
So Trouty, is there anything else you would like to say in terms of introducing this this piece of literature that we've missed?
Yeah, I did want to mention sort of we talked earlier about our history with literature and film in general, but growing up here in America, I definitely have like a past with this piece. And I read it in 9th grade. It was an English class. I remember reading it. I still have the copy. I stole it. I used to steal all the copies of books I had to read. And at the time, I was really into sci-fi, fantasy. I was reading Lord of the Rings and Ender's Game and Dune and stuff. So I don't think that I really appreciated it like that. But then in my 20s, I got more obsessed with reading what I considered the classics, Yeah. So I decided to read that. I had it on my shelf, and I got into it, and I fell in love. And the reason I fell in love was... one of the reasons was it's got a simple and effective style. She mentions in that quote that I read earlier that she rarely uses a word that's more than 2 syllables. And, and that, with that being said, it still just presents this story in a way that's totally digestible, and it's really easy to understand while still being deep, There's no need for grandiose descriptions of things like Tolkien. Like Tolkien will spend an hour talking about a door, whereas
Stephen King
she'll just be like, "Yeah, there was a door. Let's move on." There's not really a lot of clever wordplay or anything like that. I think of like Douglas Adams, those types of authors that have to be like real witty and pithy. She's not like that. But since rereading it that time in my early 20s, I probably read it 5 or 6 other times. It's that good. Yeah. So my history with this piece, that's why I recommended it as our first book, and I was glad that you agreed, Porto. Mm-hmm. But I love this book. I absolutely love it, and I think that you guys are all going to love it as well.
Well, I've had a little sneak peek as I was in the library, as I said the other day. I sat down for about an hour and read, and It is a, I hate the description page turner. That's kind of dirty marketing speak, but this is a pleasure to read. It's a pleasure to read. It's charming. It's got character. It's got heart. And I haven't even gotten into the meat of this story yet, but it's setting the scene. There is a life to it, and a vibrancy, and a sense of humor to it, and a dark undertone to it. I think it's a great read thus far.
Sure. Well,
so
do you maybe want to get into sort of where we're going from here? We had talked about, we had kind of tried to find a good amount that we're going to read, that isn't too much, but is a sufficient amount that when we meet in 2 weeks, we'll have a lot to talk about. So do you want to get into that?
Yeah, I was thinking about approximately 100-ish pages, and in this, it turns out in this novel, it will land us at the start of chapter 10. So I was hoping that we could, you and I, at least you've already read it a bunch of times, will have read through the first 9 chapters and gotten to the beginning of chapter 10. And I think, I mean, with what I've read, there's already a ton to talk about that I'm biting my tongue about. But I think that'll be plenty, but it's not so much that people are going to feel too far behind if they don't read a ton.
Yeah, and I do want to let everybody know, I have read this book before, but I'm rereading it. I've already read the first chapter just to kind of get in the vibe, but I'm going to be reading 9 chapters. We'll all be at the same point, hopefully in 2 weeks. Except Kiwi, who will be done with the book and moved on.
Kiwi's going to have listened to it 3 times.
But yeah, I'm going to be reading it too. It's not like I'm like waiting for you guys to catch up. But yeah, I think that chapters 1 through 9, it's not an unreasonable amount of reading to do, especially with this book, because I'm telling you, when you start reading it, you're going to get sucked into the world.
Yeah.
I mean, just the way she describes stuff, like, it's in the American Deep South, and she's describing the humidity, and I feel like wet. I feel that my skin's starting to feel humid, like she describes things in a way that you're living it. You're in the mind of the narrator. So it's really cool.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out, guys, a little bit more about our Discord. So I realize I haven't discussed it too much. Just like Trout said, the Discord is, kind of the heart of this in a way. And I just wanted to point out some of the things we've got. Obviously, there's a general chat. Book access, the thread is where I just try to post different ways you can acquire the text. And everyone is welcome to contribute to this, like Melissa Kim has. Film discussion is pretty self-explanatory. So here we've got spoiler chat. And I think this is important. For example, Kiwi has listened to a bunch of this already in the car. This is a really good spot if anyone has any thoughts about something they found particularly interesting that maybe not everyone has gotten up to yet, or they think might spoil some things for people who haven't been through that part of the story yet. This is a great place to drop these ideas, and we're kind of hoping that parts of the Discord like this will become an ongoing discussion, where people can, like I might be reading chapter 13 one night and go, oh fuck, that's crazy, and then I might go, I wonder if anyone spoke about it. Go into the spoiler chat. Look, Cece's got something to say about it. Wow, I agree. Blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of like, I think we kind of want this to be like a live dialogue that's always available for people to use, because I know when I'm reading, I want to talk about shit right away when it happens. Like I'm like, oh my God, this is, I get really kind of hype about that shit. And sweet additions, just photos of books, whatever. Guilty pleasures, I don't know, we'll probably define that as it goes on. Yeah. But I just wanted to talk about the spoiler chat a little bit in case Kiwi has a bunch she wants to get off her chest about the book.
Yeah, and to answer your question, Cece, yes, that's absolutely something that we'll put up very soon on the Discord. We'll have a schedule. It'll be an image or something that'll have all the descriptions of like, here's what we're reading this week to this week, and we'll get all that up there for sure. And, we had talked about this before, but this is something that this is the bare bones. This is the skeleton of our idea because we want you guys to be a part of building this idea. Another thing we've talked about is having guests on some episodes where we can talk about things from their perspective. So that's
Totally.
something that we'll work on doing. But any ideas that you guys have, share them. Share them in chat. Share them in the Discord. We're listening. We're paying attention. We want to grow this with you guys. So, yeah, and that's also a really good point. Double brackets, if you're going to be in, even in spoiler chat, if you really feel like you need to, throw those double brackets in there, and then it'll hide the spoiler text unless you want to click on it. Yeah.
I didn't even know you could do that. That's dope.
So Cece is now the president of Film and Literature. She has better ideas than we do. But anyways, yeah. I just want you guys to know that if you have an idea, if you have something, I think maybe it was Dreadsley had sent me a message and said, hey, can we also do something about art appreciation? And so that's why I threw that art appreciation channel in there, so that we've got a place. If you've got painting or a certain painter or a photographer that you like, throw that stuff in there, because we want this to be not just about To Kill a Mockingbird and not just about the book we're reading right now, but also the arts in general. We want this to be a community where people can come in and, like I said, celebrate our passion for the things that make us human.
Well put. So, Trouty, I feel like we've done a pretty good job of explaining what we're about with this channel, what we kind of hope for it, introducing the book. Is there anything else you would like to mention specifically, or should we start chatting with chat a little bit?
Well, I think before we jump into chat, I had mentioned in the Discord, and I think we mentioned at the beginning, that we have we're having an after party with a movie night.
Yeah.
And we're going to be hanging out. Now, you'll have to give us a little bit of a period after we end the show before we get into the Discord and start filming the movie. I'd say a half hour is plenty of time. But we'll get that all posted in the Discord. So if you're in there, you'll know when we're going to start the movie and go live. But I wanted to announce the movie. I hope you guys like it. I thought, we've got this Film and Literature Society. It's all about books and movies. And I thought, what better movie that also celebrates books than The Never-Ending Story. So that's what we're gonna watch tonight. I hope you guys enjoy it, but it is a movie about a book. So like there's nothing that crosses more than that. So that's what we're gonna watch tonight. We're gonna be in the text chat, having a good time, having some laughs and stuff while the movie's going. But that's all I have, and that may be something that we do every 2 weeks after the episode. We'll have a movie showing. Now, the goal for the book that we're reading, To Kill a Mockingbird, there is a fantastic movie, To Kill a Mockingbird. It's got Gregory Peck in it. It's one of the greatest movies ever made, in my opinion. So that's another theme that we've got that we're working with, is we're going to try to pick books that also have pretty good movies to watch with them. So, for now we're doing To Kill a Mockingbird. We may do, I don't know, Dune comes to mind. There's all kinds of books that are turned into movies. And that's what we're going to try to do. Maybe not always, but a lot of the times it's going to be books where we can, when we finish the book, we can watch the movie, and then we can all discuss how much better the book was. Because that's always the case.
Well, that's always an illuminating experience, isn't it? The book to the movie. And, I actually take a slightly different stance. Obviously, the books generally contain more and have a richer experience. Sometimes I'm kind of impressed with movie adaptations. They never overthrow or dethrone the book.
Sure.
But an example of that, I thought The Lord of the Rings was a great film.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah, those films were awesome. Now, the only issue that I see with that, and I'd love to hear what you guys in chat have to say about this, but I read The Lord of the Rings knowing that the movie I had read The Hobbit before, but I got into The Lord of the Rings knowing that the movie was coming out. And then I had this image in my head of this world. We talked about that, where it's the interface between your mind and the text, and you create imagination land, But when you see it, when someone else's vision is then put in your face, it kind of ruins your, like, now when I read The Lord of the Rings, a lot of times when I'm reading about Gandalf, I'm imagining Ian McKellen, like I can't imagine the Gandalf that I was thinking of back in the day. So I do think it kind of ruins that. So even when it is well done, it still destroys your mental castle or the mental world that you've created,
Yeah, your visual imagination was vanquished. That sucks.
Yeah.
At least what it was stolen with was visually impressive. At least it wasn't like a kind of a sucky thing that stole it from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude, I'm really excited. I'm pumped for this whole thing. And chat, I'm really stoked that you guys are here. It seems like you're all pretty pumped as well. I'm gonna, after this film screening today, I'm probably gonna get reading. I'm gonna start leaving some of my thoughts in spoiler chat. And also another thing as well, if there's anything you think is important that we should discuss in an upcoming episode, toss it in the Discord as well. Like, we'll take it all into consideration. Like Trout said, it's not just our thing. It's not just he and I. It's all of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chat, what's up?
Yeah, thank you so much for being active. And I do want to apologize. I know that Porto had said something, but we don't want to waste your time, and we want these episodes to be, about an hour and a half tops. We want them to be condensed, short and sweet. Yep. And so we had some stuff we had to get through, but here we are. We have your attention. I saw a lot of really good ideas for books that also have movies. Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre. Oh, I would love to do that, like, romantic period. Jane Eyre especially. That was always my favorite. But yeah, like some of the Bronte sisters' work. That would be so cool. Memoirs of a Geisha. I've never read. I don't know.
That'd be bringing me back to university, Jane Eyre. Yeah, I'd be into that. I'd actually love to look back at that. It's been over a decade since I've looked at any of the kind of Gothic era of literature.
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't read Memoirs of a Geisha either, but I would be down. I would totally be down.
Yeah. Side note, my copy of Jane Eyre is stolen from the high school I went to. Like a lot of I've got a pretty decent selection of books that were stolen from the Cowan High School library. So.
Short stories, CC. I have to admit something to you right now, CC and chat. I fucking love short fiction. Like, I like short fiction as much as long form fiction. I am a huge fan of Somerset Maugham's short fiction, of Hemingway's short fiction. I have this big, thick anthology of Scottish short fiction. I write short fiction. So personally, that's a big fat yes from me. I would love to do some short fiction.
Best short story author is right there on my arm, though. Dostoevsky. He writes the best short stories. The Russians all write the best short stories, in my opinion.
Wait, by short, do you mean like what, 20,000 words?
Well, he also writes the best long stories too.
My favorite short story. I honestly think Somerset Maugham's my favorite short fiction writer. I know he's kind of considered as being a little bit style. He didn't like reinvent a style or anything like that, but his subject matter is something that I love, and it's always about people that choose to be different.
Yeah. Well, and
drives people that choose to be different. So I love that thing.
And CC, we had talked actually, and I kind of forgot about this, but we had talked about maybe doing a format of a novel and then a short story and then a novel. So when we finish this book, maybe we can pick out a short story that we can all read, and it'll kind of give us a time to sort of recharge and relax before we move on to the next big undertaking. And we'd just have these like single go-to episodes that would just be about like, hey, we read this short story by Salinger or this short story by whoever. So we'll talk about that more, and definitely that's a discussion that we can have in the Discord and try to pick out something that would work for everybody.
Capster asks, do we know how long it takes for a civilization or a society to collapse? I don't think there is. I don't know if it's as simple as like water boils at 100 Celsius.
Sure. Well, and it's organic.
I'm not sure.
Right? I mean,
what that is.
A civilization sort of pivots, right? I mean, like you could argue that the Greek Empire was the end of the Greek civilization, but like the Greek people still exist. So, I mean, short of genocide, I would say that probably they don't collapse. They just sort of transform, you know? Maybe.
The Australian film starring Nick Giannopoulos called Kings of Mykonos marked the end of the Greek civilization. in 2005.
The Australian film Mad Max marked the end of Australian civilization.
Yes. The Wall by Sartre is the best short story I've read I actually really like Sartre's fiction. His philosophical writing is sexy as well, but it's over here. One of the recent books I read, what is it? The Age of Reason was a great one. And he also wrote Nausea. I like how Sartre attempted to put his philosophy into fiction with people who were, really trying to attain freedom. And I would be interested in doing some Sartre in the future as well.
Now, Cece brings up an interesting point. She brought up Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I had talked about Douglas Adams earlier in the episode. Yep. Comedy, well, that's another genre that we could really get into. There's some very funny books, and I would love to do Douglas Adams. We could either do that, or he's got the Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, which is another, and that's one I haven't read, but that's one that we could do. But just in general, like, comedy is not off the table. We could have a time where we read just a really funny, side-splittingly hilarious book.
Totally. One might argue that comedy is harder to nail. So when people do it properly, it's even more of a feat. Did you ever read any Terry Pratchett, or did anyone in chat read any Terry Pratchett ever?
I haven't read it. By the way, welcome in, Blacks. How you doing, buddy? Oh, Melissa's here. Howdy, Melissa.
Hey, hi guys. What's up? Godzilla versus Kong, great film. Is that the new one?
Yeah, it is. I've got it on my list to watch. It might end up being just sort of a cheesy popcorn flick, but those are fun too. Right. I like explosions,
I watched a very lowbrow flick the other night from the 90s. Does anyone know? Oh shit. Breakdown with Kurt Russell.
I can't say I've seen
remember that film?
Kurt Russell, he's based though, for sure.
Oh, it's so good, dude. It's like basically he and his wife break down in the middle of somewhere in the middle of the US, in the wilderness, and I guess these hicks essentially kidnap his wife and pretend that it didn't happen, and he has to go on a Kurt Russell spree to find her. It's 90s. It's good.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like good, Deliverance almost. Like maybe that was a theme in the 90s, these movies where you break down in the middle of nowhere and some rednecks start messing with you. Deliverance is another good one like that.
Well, Deliverance is a legitimately good film.
Yeah, it is.
I wouldn't say that about Breakdown, but still, it was a good time.
We just watched, in the Discord, we watched Big Trouble in Little China, which is arguably Kurt Russell's best film.
I love that movie so much.
It's great,
I love that movie
so
much.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell had a good run. Snake Plissken is obviously a great character. Have you gone back and watched Death Proof?
I haven't. I can't say I've seen that, no.
The Tarantino flick, Death Proof. Oh man.
Oh, yeah. Part of the double feature
films.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like that movie. I think it's pretty good, and he makes a really good villain.
Yeah, the Grindhouse kind of stuff was pretty cool. Because it was a double feature, and then I think Robert Rodriguez did the car one as well.
Terror.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, so Tarantino's was the car one, right? Yeah.
That was the car one, where he's like a
Planet
serial
Terror
killer who kills people on the road or whatever.
The zombie. So the best thing about those movies is, the fake previews that they do? There's the preview for the movie where it's like, don't go into the basement. Don't open that door. Don't, and he keeps saying don't, and it flashes don't on the screen. So back then I saw it in theaters with my friend, and for years afterwards we would just yell don't all the time. We lived together, and so we'd be hanging out on the front porch, and people would ride their bike by, and we'd be like, don't. It was like a sort of an in joke that we had. But I absolutely love those movies. They're really goofy.
Hey, Cabster asked a question earlier that I can't remember what it was, but it was something along the lines of a breakaway society in Western Australia. Was that you, Cabster, that asked that question?
Yeah, he asked that. I was curious too.
I don't mean to be annoying and make you type it again, but if you could, then I could respond to it. What's the range of literature you guys are planning on having? Like, what's the simplest book you do, and what? Well, I wouldn't even look at it, Silas, in terms of simple and difficult. We're not, I'm not. I think I would look at it more in terms of entertainment, enjoyment, and richness of text. Anything that gives us ideas and makes us want to discuss. I mean, it could be a picture book, it could be a graphic novel, for all I fucking care, as long as there's something in there that is worth looking at and that's fun to analyze and digest and dissect. So I mean, I would probably draw the line in terms, personally, and this is not something Trout and I have discussed, but I'm sure we will. I would personally draw the line at something that requires a dictionary, a side reader to understand.
Yeah.
So, but there's not a lot of that. We're not going to have to worry about that,
Yeah, and my big thing, and we've talked about this before, my big thing is we want it to be accessible. I kind of have a couple qualifiers. Is it accessible? Is it something that anyone can pick up and read as long as you're, able to read and to get it, And then the other thing is it accessible in the sense that, like, you can, for fairly cheap or free, get a copy of it. So we're not going to be picking some like obscure, tome from the 1500s that A, you can't read, and B, even if you could understand it, it's like $500 because it's not in print anymore. We're not going to be picking anything like that. So,
yes.
So yeah, but I agree. Like, if it's something that you can read on its own without assistance from, a college course or something, like a professor teaching it to you, then it's fair game, and it doesn't matter if it's, like he said, if we do The Watchmen at some point. I'd love to do that, which is one of the,
so good.
Yeah,
I'd love
it's
to do that.
Great graphic novel. I'd love to do other forms of media, not just like novels. So short stories, poetry, graphic novels, whatever. Like that's what this is all about. It's about literature, not necessarily just, like long form novels.
Yeah, we're not out here trying to be academic snobs. I tell you what, where I draw the line as well. James Joyce. I won't have any of that here.
No way.
No Joyce. I can't do it. I can't do Joyce. I can do anything else. I'm not. No Ulysses over here.
Yeah, if you say the word Ulysses in chat, we'll ban you. We will ban you just for typing Ulysses.
Yeah, it's a bannable word. Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman's great. The Sandman was a really cool. Did you ever have you got any experience with Neil Gaiman, Trav?
I don't. I'm familiar with him, but I've never read any of his work. I know that he wrote some novels as well as he's a pretty prolific comic.
American Gods was a great novel.
Yeah, and I'd have to look through. I've got a ton of graphic novels. It's possible that I have something by him that I just never, that I didn't realize was by him. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed The Sandman, and then there was a spin-off series created by Mike Carey called Lucifer, which was the basically the figure of, I guess, Satan from the Sandman series that I think was turned into a television series. I didn't really get into the television series, but yeah, Neil Gaiman's got some great works.
Yeah.
You had The Sandman, The Dream Hunters. The art in The Sandman was really cool as well, particularly the cover art. It's kind of like that 90s. It almost, like, covers of The Sandman kind of looked like it was a new The Cure record. Like, kind of had that gothic kind of early 90s vibe to it. I really liked it. Grant was a president.
Well, Blacks asked why we would ban the name Ulysses, and Silas said that we hate President Ulysses Grant.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. No, I'm just not a fan of James Joyce. That's all. I think James Joyce is the most overrated writer of all time. Just a hot take.
Yeah, and if he
I read
gets
the portrait of the artist of the young man, didn't like the portrait, didn't like what I saw.
if he gets into literative author that he's banning, then I'm calling it now. There's no Walt Whitman allowed either. We're not doing.
That's
Walt
fine. That's cool. We can we get one each. We get one each. You and I. That's fine. Walt Whitman can go. I'm James Joyce's out. Everything else is fair game. Cabster says, we'll find the article I read several weeks back about. Oh, sorry, Cabster, dude, I fucking probably missed it again. What you were saying?
Yeah,
it was a breakaway society in Australia that went into the woods and they lost all semblance of culture from the city within a span of 25 to 30 years. You know, I feel like maybe I heard mumblings about that, and I would believe that in WA because there's a lot. Was it in WA? I don't know. Well, in Australia in general, there is a lot of space, and there definitely have been cults around here. It's, you know, we got some cults. We get it done. The Dream Hunters was beautiful and had a kitsune, so I was obsessed, but it's back in Cali. Haven't read that, unfortunately. Trouty, what do you reckon? Are we sort of in sort of wrapping up type phases?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just, you know, like I said, I want everybody to know. I saw Silas. Thank you so much for posting the link to the Discord. And if somebody wants to post that again, just in case there's somebody here who's not in the Discord, that is like we've said multiple times. That's the central theme. Thank you, Blacks. That's the central theme. Is the Discord. That's going to be the place where we have the majority of the conversation. This is another component of it. But I'm looking forward to it, and I really just want to stress again, join the Discord and help us grow this in the way that you'd like to see it grown, because it's not just about me and him. We're just the hosts. You guys are part of this too, and we love that you guys all came out, and really, really appreciate your involvement. But, you know, read chapters 1 through 9, and we'll meet again in 2 weeks, and we'll start talking about what we've read, and let's start making this a habit, because that's what it's about, is like building the habit of reading and then having a community that we can come back to discuss it at length.
And I would say you don't even have to wait to discuss it. Start the discussion now in the Discord.
Sure.
We can start it right now, you know? So, Joseph Conrad. Don't get me started on Joseph Conrad. That's a can of worms as well, Capster. But I'll elaborate later. So, Trouty.
Hello. When
are we watching this film?
Well, if we're gonna end here, I would say probably in 30-40 minutes. Once we end, I have to, use the restroom and kind of get myself situated, and then I'll throw something up in the Discord. I added an extra channel. It's called The Cinema, and that is where we'll all meet. I'll be streaming the movie in there, but I would ask, my only request is everybody mute your mics, make sure that you're not making a bunch of noise so we can all enjoy the movie. We'll have the text room, the text chat, where we can get together and, discuss the movie or make jokes and make fun of the goofy main character. He is goofy. So yeah, I'd say, give me 30-40 minutes and we'll be good to go, and I'll put a time in there for sure, and we'll start, once everybody's in.
Looking forward to it. And look, guys, I would really just like to thank you all for being here. We weren't sure. Well, I wasn't sure how this would catch on, and I've really enjoyed. This is just a little introduction. We're sort of not even getting right into it just yet, but I'm really enjoying this, and I hope everyone else is as well.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, how are you, Butcher? Welcome in.
Hey, Angry Butcher. Hello. How you doing?
Silas, same here. It's absolutely shattered my expectations. We were talking before and we thought, well, this is going to be a kind of a slow growth thing. And it is. I think it is. I think there's a lot of potential here. But you guys are the core group here that can help us sort of create something that's going to be a really great community for everybody interested in film, literature, art, music. We'll have all that. And I think it'll be nice.
Very exciting. Very exciting. Thank you so much, Trouty, for having me.
Thank you.
And inviting me to this society. Thank you, everybody else, for being here. Are we ready to ready to bounce? Are we done?
Yeah, I think we are. I'm going to show you guys. We're going to show off the final screen, and then I'll be in the Discord later, and I'll here in a minute I'll put the time for the after party where we're going to be watching Neverending Story. It's going to be a lot of fun. So.
Oh, by the way, if anyone came in and they missed anything and they want to catch it, this will be going up on YouTube in a couple of days. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, check the YouTube. It's youtube.com/Film and Literature Society, or just
put the link in the Discord.
Yeah, search Film and Literature Society on YouTube and you'll find us. All right. Well, thank you, Porto, for joining me, and we'll see you guys on the Discord, and in 2 weeks, 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be doing the same thing, except we'll actually have reading that we can discuss instead of just an introductory thing. So good night.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Good night, guys.
Good night.